All right. So for the first example, so what I've passed out to you guys is basically a page one of the physics application assessment. We're going to do a couple of practices so that way you guys know what to expect. So in this first practice, I'll walk you guys through, and we're looking at energy changes. So in this example, we have someone holding a book, and then they're throwing the book in the air, and it's falling to the ground, and then bang onto the ground. So the first step of this is to identify how the kinetic energy is changing and also what force is involved in that change. So in this column here, I want you guys to complete is stating if the kinetic energy is zero, increasing, decreasing, or at the maximum amount. When we're talking about kinetic energy, we're talking about the energy of motion. So thinking about how fast is it going. And then in this case here, you are circling which force is the one that is causing that change in kinetic energy. So I'll do maybe the first two as an example, and you guys can then do the rest. So at the start, if my book is on my hand, it is zero. Nothing's happening. And so that means that there are no unbalanced forces. So we have to remember that the changing in the forces is what's going to influence then the kinetic energy. All right. So it's being launched into the air. We're starting to throw it. What's happening to my kinetic energy? It is increasing. All right. The force that is involved, is that because of gravitational, applied force, or support force from the floor? What's pushing it upward? The applied force from my hand. All right. I want you guys to do the other four, and then I'll go over the answers and then talk about what the next step is for the assessment. All right. Cool. So.
Oh, you alright, brother? Oh, I got a butt there, brother. It's so cold.
Actually, let me just pull up the answers just to make sure I have the right ones. Because I want to make sure this is not my area of expertise. Just double check. All right, sorry guys. Made a mistake with that first one, which is why we need to double check our work. All right. So the kinetic energy when the book is being launched is at the maximum amount of energy because it's moving the fastest. That's the maximum gravitational energy. Do you want me to do it? Let me show you what I mean.
Oh, it's maximum energy that you...
Yeah. So basically, we're thinking about, with kinetic energy, when is the book moving the fastest? When it's coming down here.
Yep.
No? You're pushing it up.
And when you're pushing it up. Because as you push the book upwards, it's going to, or as the book is going upwards, it's going to keep going up and up and up, but it's going to slow down. Yep.
So that's decreasing.
And that's decreasing, and then as it stops at the top and changes direction and starts going down. Yeah?
So then it would be increasing when it comes down.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So kinetic energy is at its maximum. As it's going up, it's slowing down, so the kinetic energy is decreasing. The reason why it's decreasing, which force is that? Gravitational. So the gravity is the opposing force that's slowing it down. When it's at the maximum height, just before it starts to turn around and start falling down. Sorry. Then it's at zero. I have no more kinetic energy because my book has stopped, momentarily stopped moving. So I'm throwing this tape in the air. For a moment, it's going to temporarily pause at the top, so that way it changes direction. So it's fastest when it's leaving my hand and when it returns to my hand. So when we are at 0, the only force that is pushing on it is the gravitational force still, because now it's going to start going down. When that book starts falling, it's going to start falling very slowly, and then it's going to increase that speed. All right, what's causing that? Gravity. And then when the book finally hits the floor, do I have any more kinetic energy? No, because it stopped moving. And then what is the forces now at play? The support from the floor. All right, so there are our answers. All right, we okay with that? Do you want me to repeat it? You'll watch it again? Okay. All right, let me pass out the marking schedule so you guys can see the requirements for this assessment. The first thing to kind of keep in mind is being able to do that and describing the forces that are at play. Not the forces that are at play, the way the energy is changing is the achieve requirement. Here's the assessment template so you guys know how you're getting marked. Why are you stopping me? That you worry about. There's a queue. Marissa's next. Who asked for after? Marissa? It's on the speaker. Jessica. Told you there's a queue. All right. Let's keep going. Oh, this is still recording. Oh, it's going to be a long pause. Huh? Oh, why is it chemical energy? Where do we get our energy from? Because we need the muscles to be able to move. Where do the muscles get the energy from?
Food.
Our food.
Oh.
Yeah. So energy is not created or destroyed, it's just transformed. So I can only have the kinetic energy because I've eaten some food earlier. Yeah. And then sound and heat energy at the end. We'll talk about that. Huh? Never mind. Okay. All right. So I've given you guys the checklist for the assessment so you guys understand what you need to do for the Achieve, Merit, and Excellence. So we have already, by filling in this sheet here, have gotten the Achieved. Or halfway through, actually 2/3 to the Achieved. So observations have been made about the physics example, how we made observations about what's happening with the book. Yes, wait. There is a queue of people. All right, have we identified the energy types in the observations? Yeah, we've been talking about kinetic energy, things like that. All right. Last thing we need to do for the Achieved is talk about modifications, and we'll talk about that towards the end. So give me a second to get the next bit passed out. Yeah. Okay, So next thing on our to-do list when it comes to the requirements. So this one here about modification we'll talk about as our last step. But what I do want to show you guys is basically what the achieved that you guys have just done. Well then, how do you increase it up to a merit and an excellence? So for the merit, what we need to do instead, and I'll do this in blue marker so you guys know what the merit is we are looking for now explanations for why the energy has changed. What we're looking for is if you are showing understanding of the law of conservation, understanding that energy is changing from one form to another. So what I'll show you guys is what a merit level answer looks like and then what an excellence level answer looks like. So for a merit level, we have an explanation on what's going on in that image. So we have at the start, the book is in the person's hand, which is what we see over here.
It's a glass.
And it has chemical potential energy. So now we're starting to identify what the energy is. Once they throw their hand up, the book gets a maximum speed, so it has maximum kinetic energy. So they're basically taking what they have written here and they're constructing it into a paragraph. So think about the sequence of events. Once the book leaves the hand, it gradually slows down. So we have another description of the movement as it moves up. So its kinetic energy is decreasing. It is turning into gravitational potential energy as its height increases. So more gravitational energy, the higher it goes up. At the maximum height, the book stops for a split second, and so the kinetic energy is 0. As its maximum height, its gravitational energy is at its maximum. Then the book starts falling, it loses height, so the gravitational potential energy is decreasing. The energy is turning into kinetic energy, which is why the book's speed is increasing. Finally, it hits the floor, it stops moving, so it has no kinetic energy. This kinetic energy of the book has turned into heat and sound. So when the book hits the ground, you hear the bang. There's also some heat energy that's being released because it has some friction with the ground. All right, so that's what we're looking at for merit. Cool.
Wait.
So if we're looking back at that checklist, did this explain the energy changes in the throwing the book example?
Yeah.
Yes, it did. Did it show understanding of the law of conservation?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're showing that energy is not created or destroyed, it's just transformed, and we're stating where it's coming from and going to. Cool. All right. Then when we're thinking about the excellence one, we're looking for a more comprehensive understanding, so it just means a little bit more in depth. The main thing that changes between the merit level answer and the excellence level answer is that you're including an understanding of net force. So you're showing how the forces affect the energy that is available. So let's have a look at the excellence level section. With this one here, what I've done is I've highlighted in the stuff that shows the addition of the force information, and that's basically getting this answer up to excellence. So it's more or less the same answer, but they've included sections to talk about how the force is at play. So first off, when we throw the book, so the book's in the hand. Oh, such a bad draw. So here's my book in the hand. It's not moving anywhere. Right now, when I think about the forces, what's pushing the, oh, sorry, you guys can't see that. What's pushing the book down to the ground?
Gravity.
Gravity. So I have a force pushing downward, and that's gravity. What's resisting it from falling to the ground right now?
Nothing. Yeah.
My hand. So the hand is providing support as its force. Yeah? Are these equal?
Okay.
Yes, these are equal and balanced, because if it wasn't equal and balanced, it would be moving. We could also write that the net force is equal to 0. So I'm just trying to unpack a bit of what we're seeing in the image. So when I start to push the book up into the air, what force is increasing? My force going upwards. So when it's starting to move in the air, that support force is increasing. It's greater than, oh, that's a very bad looking arrow. Sorry about that. Look better. So the support force, or the force from the hand, is greater than the gravity. So that's why it's moving upward. Once it leaves the hand, it starts to slow down. So when I don't have my hand pushing it, I don't have that support force anymore that's continuously kind of pushing it up. Eventually what happens is I get to the stage where my book reaches the maximum height. So I've used up all my support push force. But when it's at that maximum height, the gravity is acting on it and pushing it down. Now, since I don't have my hand there, is anything going to support it and prevent it from falling down? No, so it's going to keep falling down. So the gravitational forces are still acting on the book. At this stage, that's why the speed's reducing, and then we have the book starting to fall due to the downwards gravitational force acting on it. All right, and then the last thing is when it hits the floor is applying a force against it, so that way it doesn't keep falling into the ground, into the earth. So we have my floor here. We have the gravitational force again. What's pushing up against it is the support from the floor. All right, cool. We good? All right, so looking at the excellence criteria, have we included information about the net force? Yes, so that's how we get up to excellence. All right, the last thing we need to do is we need to talk about the improvements that I can make to make this experiment or this transfer better. All right, so last thing we need to then do for this I'll just show you this. So what we're looking for those that have just come back in, for the achieved, all we need is this sheet here. You are describing what's happening with the kinetic energy, and you're when it comes to the merit, you need to be explaining what's happening, relating the speed and the kinetic energy, and also looking at showing me you understand that energy transfer. Hold on. Forgot my phone. All right, if you want to get an excellence then, you need to then integrate information about the forces and how does that influence the energy. All right, so last thing we need to do for the achieved, or for the merit, or for the excellence, is we need to talk about modifications that we can make in order to improve this energy transfer. So if we're looking at some modifications, for the achieved, one of the things we could just state is if I wanted my book to go higher, I just need to throw harder. Yeah? That provides more energy, so that would then be enough to get you to the achieved. So no explanations are required for the achieved, you just have to describe what's going on. Easy peasy. All right, for the merit then, I am looking for that modification, but again, I'm looking for a reason for that modification and why it would work. So I need it linked back into forces or back into energy. So, for example, to improve the maximum height of the book going up, the person should throw with a greater force. This then here is giving me the why. So there's more kinetic energy. So that's the achieved answer. To get this answer up to the merit level, you're giving me the reason why. A very good linking word is the word so. So there is more kinetic energy. I gave you that piece of paper. We okay with that? All right. So that would be what you need for the merit. All right, for the excellence then, again, we are looking for that comprehensive understanding. So we're looking for justifications of the modified procedure and discussion of problems that you would have in this experiment and how you'd overcome them. So excellence, you can see, is a little bit longer than the merit. First thing here for the excellence is talking about why having the greater force allows it to have more kinetic energy. So in this case, greater force to act against the downward force of gravity. So now we are integrating information about the forces with the energy. This would result, sorry, there's a typo there, in a greater net force pointing upwards, allowing for more kinetic energy in the upward motion. So that's integrating the net force into the answer. The other thing that we can talk about then are the challenges. So one of the challenges you could have in this experiment is how heavy the book is. It's harder to toss a heavy book, and that's because there's more weight force going down that's opposing you. So weight is the mass of the book times the gravity of it. So that's one reason why you'd have a challenge there. And if I want to overcome that challenge, I would use a lighter book. The second thing you could talk about is let's use a smaller book, so that way there's less surface area for it to interact with air. So air resistance is what's causing that opposing force. So if I reduce that air resistance, then I would have more kinetic energy. Think about like when you design a car, you want it to be very aerodynamic so you can get a lot more of your energy transferred into speed. If you have a very brick-like car, that's like the speaker here, you're going to lose a lot of energy to the wind resistance because that energy is going to be transferred into something insufficient like heat. So that's kind of the troubleshooting of that. All right, that's everything for that bit there. That is a worked example. So, yes. All right, so, right, last bit of the period. So, just as a reminder, I'm going to be collecting your work today, so that way I can spend tomorrow checking it. So you can use the rest of this period to get some work done. You can finish up week 3's work if it's not done yet, or you can start this week's tasks. For the actual work that I want done, it's all on Google Classroom. So remember, at the end of today's session, you guys are going to be handing in your notebook, and if you are doing anything on hard copy, make sure it's glued into your notebook. I'm not going to tick it off as being done unless it's glued in because I don't like mess. If you're doing anything online, then submit it onto Google Classroom. I'm not going to be hunting around for your work, so if your work's not in your notebook or handed in online, I'm not checking it. So time is yours for you guys to use. You guys have your 5 minutes of preferred activity time if you want to use it at the end of today's lesson, or you can save it. There's also 3.5 minutes that was given from your other lesson as well with the reliever. So I'll put that on the board. You can decide whether or not you want to use it.